ladies and gentlemen, it's starting to get ugly out there. Game prices just keep going up, and now we have another price increase. And I gotta say, this compounded on top of a very recent report, it's making me wonder a bit about the next generation of consoles right now, because some of these prices are getting outlandish, you could say, at this point, because, well, we've now seen the $800 console with this price increase. We'll go over that, though, here today. So if you guys enjoyed the video, hit the like button, subscribe if you're new. Let's head over here. This is from Windows Central, where I first saw this pop up. And this is for Microsoft. They have indeed raised the price once again for the Xbox Series consoles. This will be the second time, like with a substantial price increase in the US specifically here this year. Remember, like over the summer, we had them raise prices, and that got us to a $600 Xbox Series X. And I was like, wow, that's insane, because we started the generation at a $500 Xbox Series X. Now here we are with the $600. We're going the wrong way. That's always been the thing, right? Well, at that time, there was a lot of discussion around tariffs and stuff. And yeah, it seems to be what we're at least experiencing here right now. And then once again, as Microsoft is saying, what they said, macroeconomic situation. So here it is, changes in macroeconomic environment. They're being very careful not to specifically point out what it is. However, at this point, most people are looking around and realizing, oh, this is only in the US. Huh. And then we saw those amiibos. Remember the amiibos for Nintendo that are like $50 for the Kirby ones in the US? Even the others that are $40. People looked around and they're like, huh, it's cheaper outside the US. That's interesting. And these are produced in China? So people are starting to do the math, and they're realizing, yeah, this is probably tariff related. Well, in this case, with Microsoft and these Xbox consoles going up in the US, we're seeing some pretty ridiculous pricing, guys. Like, all right, so the Xbox Series S, they kind of went, this is kind of strange. They went like right to left with this. I don't really know why. You could have, either way. On the left side here, new price, you can see that's retail, or suggested retail pricing, basically. But the Xbox Series S 512 gigabyte was $380, if you remember, and now it's $400. The Series S 1 terabyte going from $430 to $450. The Xbox Series X digital, no disk drive there, $550 to $600. The Xbox Series X 1 terabyte, which is their flagship system. That's what they launched with back in 2020 as their $500 console. That was like the monster, the beast of a system at $500. And then you had the Xbox Series S that would be a more affordable $650 on that. And then the Xbox Series X 2 terabyte Galaxy Black Special Edition jumped from $730 up to $800. There it is. The $800 system. Now, you can look at the PS5 Pro, which is at $750, and be like, well, I want a disk drive for it, so that would put it over the $800 mark. But like showing up just with a sticker price right there, boom, $800. It is a reality now. Anyway, we can see down here, they did get a source from Microsoft that offered the following comments. We are navigating an incredibly dynamic environment right now. We've assessed the changing macroeconomic environment and addressed the applicable impacts. So right now with the tariffs, especially with China, they are just constantly fluctuating, but really just anywhere in the world. And Microsoft, to my understanding, the Xboxes just basically come from China. Like, it's where most of them get manufactured and then sent over. And again, to my understanding, the way it works with Microsoft is they do large batch orders and then they assess the costs at that time. And I guess they did that here and realized, okay, well, it's just going to be more money. We don't feel like taking a loss really at all in these things. We'll break even as best we can. That means pricing goes up. And that's typically how it works with these tariffs. These companies, people will say that like the greed factor, and yeah, it plays into a company that is trying to be profitable or at least make money, right? They're not necessarily in the business like this for fun. So that just ends up being the impact that's had when costs go up. That means prices go up. So now we have an $800 system from Microsoft, or really, I think the one that that you would see as, again, their flagship system, $650 in 2025. We've gone up $150 this generation from the start in 2020. That's just in 5 years. These will go into effect, by the way, October 3rd. So I guess if you're someone who is in the market for an Xbox, I mean, that's your deadline to try to pick one of these up at a cheaper rate. But I already thought it was ludicrous for these things to be like an Xbox Series X at 600. We're going to 650. So I have some concerns, go figure, I think a lot of people do, going into next generation, because at this time, we should expect any of these systems could go up in price at any time. I think right now, it could, as we're seeing, this was just on a Friday. Hey guys, prices are going up. We're going to introduce an $800 system. But pricing on these consoles can just be, a press release gets pushed, boom, it goes up 15% or something. Just like that, right? So I'm thinking about Nintendo with the Switch 2. I'm thinking about Sony with their PS5 that did already go up in price in the US, $500 to $550 for their flagship model that takes the disc drive and stuff, takes the disc and stuff. But I'm thinking about would Sony have to go up to $600? Would Nintendo have to go up to $500 with the Switch 2? Really anything, nothing's off the table, I should say, at this point. And that concerns me because of where we are right now heading into the generation. Remember, we're 5 years into this generation. So typically we see now, anyway, we see like a 7-year cycle for generations. And I know people are going to say that's too soon. 2027, we don't need a PS6 then. We don't need the next Xbox by then. And I hear you, because I think right now, I have the PS5 Pro, right? I'm using it. And I'm starting to see some games come out right now, like big games. Dying Light, The Beast came out today. Borderlands 4 recently came out. And Chronos, New Dawn, they don't have PS5 Pro support. Like, there's not a specific mode or patch for it. And I keep noticing this. I'm like, this PS5 Pro isn't even really being used as much as I thought it would, let alone the PS5 itself, that I think is still very capable. And it doesn't feel like it's really been pushed specifically by the company you would expect it to be, that being Sony, with a big first party game that really shows off what the thing can do. I think we'll get that eventually with something like, we'll say Intergalactic, or hey, Ghost of Yote's coming up, or Saros from Housemarque. Those are all games that could do it. But right now, people seem pretty content with what they have. However, it's not enough technically to match where we were with the PS4 and the Xbox One. And people have asked what I think a gaming crash would look like. I don't think we would see an immediate gaming crash. I think we would see what I would call a gaming recession. That's what I would at least coin it there. But we can see this is over on the game business. They have a very good article and report written up here that, look, it's what we hear. I feel like just before every generation starts. Is this the end of game consoles? That's been going on since the PS3 and the 360, actually. And some of that got kicked off by the PS3's pricing and the reaction from the general audience of this thing is $600. But since then, really, it's been about, will people just go over to phones or tablets, PC? And the PC market has continued to pick up, yes. But even phones and tablets, and it's not even for games, it's for everything else out there. The amount of time that gets eaten up by things like TikTok or some of these free-to-play games that you don't even need a game console for is it's overwhelming at times when the numbers really get shown off. So when I'm looking through here, right, and it says right here, console ownership is increasingly focused on the more affluent households. Data shows U.S. analytics from Circana says that households with a $100,000 plus income now make up 43% of video game hardware sales, a rise from 36% just a few years ago. And that's not surprising to see that on the rise, because it's just getting more expensive to have even a game console. And that was always the pitch for a game console. You're not going to get the $2,000 PC, but this game system is going to punch well above its weight class in terms of the hardware in there, because maybe you picked it up on sale for $200 to $300 since the system gets cheaper over the course of the generation, and large library of games to pick from. And you'll get upscaled 1080p at that time, or upscaled 4K with the PS4 Pro or something like that, right? But that was the idea. You can get a lot for the amount of money you put in, but now the average spend per person is quite high. And that's one of the reasons we're seeing revenue continue to climb or even stay the same, despite us actually having less active players with consoles right now. Now, this is all comparison for the Xbox One and the PS4 versus the Xbox Series and the PS5. However, right here, you can see last year in the US, 12 million console units were sold, the lowest figure in 8 years. Meanwhile, Ampere estimates that by the end of 2025, the number of active devices for PS5 Xbox Series generation will be 14 million behind what the PS4 and Xbox One achieved during the same point in their life cycle. The company estimates that the gap will widen to 20 million by the end of 2026. And that is completely believable because, let's face it, the Xbox, if you split up the PS5 and the Xbox in terms of their install size, it's pretty obvious that Microsoft is lagging pretty far behind when you compare that to the Xbox One versus if you compare the PS5 to the PS4. They're actually pretty comparable. Like, the PS5 is still behind, I think, by like 1.5 million units or something like that. And that could continue to widen because as we went along, the PS4 had sales during Black Friday where you got like Spider-Man and a gift card and the Slim system for $200 or something. It was crazy, some of those deals. Now you look back on that versus what we have now, and the PS5 has just continued to get more and more expensive. So it wouldn't shock me at this time, even with GTA 6, if the PS5 comes up short of what we saw with the PS4, and it's very clear that the Xbox Series is going to come up well short versus the Xbox One. And that's what I mean when I say that there would be a gaming recession versus a gaming crash. If the console market continues to shrink generation over generation, I mean, that becomes a problem because these companies need to keep looking for other ways to make revenue. And if they can't continue to pull more people in and increase their base or people in their ecosystem, then they got to charge the people there more money. And that then comes down to, wow, these things are getting more and more expensive. Game prices or subscription services or accessories or even the game consoles themselves. And yes, that's part of the reason why you're seeing Microsoft pivot once again, as it seems like they're aiming more towards, let's just have an OS that goes seamlessly between a handheld, a console, or a PC and just drives everyone to, say, our Xbox Windows Store. That way they can just at least pump up numbers when it comes to monthly active users and people involved or participating in their ecosystem. Sony seems to be doing something similar, although they're not accelerating as fast as Microsoft. They have been looking at other ways to make money, even licensing IPs over to Bandai Namco, and then they make a game and port it over even to the Switch at this time. But for Sony, they've been playing around with PC, as we've seen. I think they're going to make a bigger push into mobile here soon as well, and that's just kind of the issue right now. The game console market is struggling to grow, and these prices are not helping. Going into next generation with the PS6 and whatever Microsoft, we'll just say Xbox, I'm concerned about pricing more than I was before this happened with this price increase, because I kind of thought Sony would get the PS6 out at $600 because they would have a reason to subsidize the system, and maybe they're able to get even below that at $500 with a less capable system. They're this PlayStation portable device, that chipset, but in a console form. However, if you want the real system, we'll say the real PS6 console that's going to do all kinds of cool stuff visually and hit high resolutions and frame rates, guys, that might be a $700-800 system. Like, we need to start coming to terms with that, and I don't know how that's going to do for them when it comes to recapturing this audience that is very comfortable on the PS5. And Sony, I think, is going to have a much harder time getting people to move from the PS5 to the PS6 than they did, which they're still trying to work through, getting people from the PS4 to the PS5. And then, well, that's kind of your gaming recession. So the launch of this upcoming generation, whatever the strategy is for Microsoft and Sony, is going to be absolutely pivotal for this market. I mean, really, it's the pricing, I think, is the most important thing beyond the hardware that goes into it, how powerful it is. It's got to be approachable, or you are going to see the general audience look towards other ways to entertain themselves. And that might not even be gaming. You might just lose people to things like, I don't know, what people play on Facebook. Is it like Farmville or so? It really would come down to that. It's like, well, I can't afford this stuff. I'm going to find other things to do. And maybe it's cloud gaming. Maybe that really is the future. Because this buying a console now is it's an investment. No, it actually is an investment. If you bought the Xbox, I mean, I bought the Xbox Series when it came out at $500. I've technically made out on that by just having the system. It's $650 now for 1 TB. Man, good thing I bought that instead of stocks, right? Let me know what you guys think about this down below, though, in the comments. The price increase, once again, for Microsoft going to $650, but also $800 for a console. What do you think pricing is going to look like for next generation from Sony and Microsoft? And are you kind of concerned, based around what we're seeing with pricing, around the future of just the console market? Thanks, guys, for watching, and I'll see you next time.